The top stories tonight in Wine News. More children are expected to be vaccinated against COVID-19 as the phase 2 of the inoculation in minors begins tomorrow.
Local government units of cities and provinces placed under alert levels had been consulted with on the alert level system implementation, according to Malacanang.
Some senators support the call to suspend the excise tax on fuel amid the price increases in petroleum products. Philippine military opens exercises on cyber defense and internal security.
Prominent Russian critic Alexei Navalny has been awarded European Union's top human rights prize.
1 out of 5 New Zealanders don't believe in climate change, according to a study. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Thursday, October 21, 2021. I am Herlene Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the Philippines and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news. The Pediatric COVID-19 vaccination phase 2 commences in selected facilities in Metro Manila tomorrow, but local government units are looking to vaccinate only a very minimal number of minors on its first day. Asher Cadapan Jr. details why.
The local government units in Metro Manila do not want to be overwhelmed by minors wanting to be vaccinated against COVID-19. Thus, LGUs are taking extra precautions in vaccinating them. Navotas City Mayor Toby Tiangco points out that this will avoid overcrowding as children are required to be accompanied by a parent or an adult guardian throughout the vaccination process.
Sa unang mga batches natin, mabagal po talaga tayo magpakuna. Ang target lang yata po natin sa Biyernes ay 150, no? Kung iisipin nyo yung Navotas City Hospital, noong nag-roll out kami ng Pfizer dyan, kaya natin dyan 400, lampas pa minsan. Kaya lang mabagal po dito, kumbaga slow but sure.
The Malabon City government meanwhile schedules almost 100 minors out of over 5,000 children who registered for the vaccination. Malabon City Public Information Officer Bong Padua says they even use a bigger facility for the pediatric vaccination rollout instead of the city hospital.
Dito po naman kasi ito pong Oreta Sports Center natin. Ito po yung maluwag, aircon at magiging maayos ang ating mga kabataan na magpapabakuna bukas. At hindi rin problema pagka nagkaroon tayo ng mga severe reaction, yun pong ating hospital. Yan lang, katabi lang ating hospital.
Marikina City, on the other hand, provided a separate facility dedicated for the vaccination of minors located inside the Marikina Sports Complex, the biggest vaccination site in the city. Marikina City COVID vaccination focal person Dr. Christy C. assures they have sufficient number of healthcare workers to manage the facility.
May tie-up kami ng AMANG, tsaka ang LGU ng Marikina. If ever na magkaroon ng adverse effects, madali namin siya itabo. Lagi kami may standby na ambulance. At ang instruction ni Mayor, hindi lang isang ambulance ang naka-standby, at least 3.
The Department of Health estimates around 1.2 million children with comorbidities aged 12 to 17 years old nationwide wanting to be vaccinated. Asher Cadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
A health reform advocate and former advisor to the National Task Force suggests that the government should create another team to help Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. on planning the country's vaccination program. Aiko Miguel will tell us why.
Over 400,000 near-expiry Moderna COVID-19 vaccines procured by the private sector are still in use up to this day. To avoid wastage, this needs to be given out to those who haven't received yet their vaccine. But with a low vaccination turnout, another team should help the government to ramp up its inoculation program.
Create muna a team that will help Secretary Galvez. Number 2 is for a data czar na magkaroon ng data management na. Kasi makita mo, ang dami nag-i-interpret at nagbo-volunteer na information. Okta, Edson Guido, Professor Guido David, Dr. Benchico, myself. Ang daming gusto na tumulong eh.
Former National Task Force Advisor Dr. Anthony Liachon also said he is more than willing to help the government again if given the chance.
Ako, I've always wanted to help the government eh. It's just that they may not like my opinion because it might actually be candid and transparent. But that's the way it is eh. You have to challenge right now the authorities and even existing guidelines natin so that we can move forward.
Dr. Liachon said the near-expiry Moderna vaccine should be used for healthcare workers, but the government has to fast-track its regulatory approval and guidelines for administration of third dose.
But right now, they need to have a plan. Kasi lalo na for this one, 400,000 yan. And these are not just simple vaccines. These are high-efficacy vaccines. And sayang naman kung hindi mabibigay.
The Department of Health explained earlier this week that an amended emergency use authorization should be approved first before the administration of third dose and even booster doses. The Philippine Food and Drug Administration says there's no vaccine manufacturer yet that has submitted an EUA application to amend the current dosing regimen of their COVID-19 vaccines being used in the Philippines. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the recommendation for hiring only those individuals who received COVID-19 vaccine shots cannot be imposed. JP Nunez will tell us why live. JP, good evening. Go ahead.
Yes, William, good evening. There's no law or legal basis to implement the no vaccine, no hire policy. The Department of Labor and Employment reiterates that employers cannot impose hiring only those vaccinated individuals.
Yung requirement na bakunado ang isang empleyado, medyo wala po tayong basihan dyan. Wala pong basis in law, so ibig sabihin hindi po pwedeng gawin ng mga kumpanya yan. As a basis, yung unvaccinated as basis of termination, palagi po nating inuulit. Sinabi at uulitin na iyan po ay discrimination at hindi po. If yung termination niya, ang sole basis noon ay unvaccinated, hindi po, bawal po yan.
To Malacanang, there should be a new law before imposing such policy.
Well, kinakailangan po siguro ng batas kung ipagbabawal yung pag-hire ng mga non-vaccinated individuals.
While the labor group, Associated Labor Unions, Trade Union Congress of the Philippines calls this discriminatory, as many workers are yet to receive vaccine shots.
So dapat pagtuunan natin ng pansin kung paano ba mababakunahan at paano ba mapaparating ang mga bakuna doon sa mga probinsya at mga liblib na lugar kung saan maraming mga manggagawa ang naghihintay at nangangailangan ng bakuna.
William, Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III also clarifies that there are still no legal basis for mandatory vaccination of all workers, but employers still has their own prerogative. That is our latest live. Back to you, William.
Yes, thank you, JP Nunez, for that live report. Meanwhile, no appeal has been discussed yet by the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases on the expansion of the COVID-19 alert level system. Rosa Dicos details why.
Local government units of cities and provinces placed under the COVID-19 alert level system were consulted prior to its implementation. This after the League of Provinces of the Philippines urged the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases to defer the expansion to November 1. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases need not to inform all the local executives nationwide since the expanded pilot of the ALS covers only select areas in the country.
Lahat po ng mga rehiyon at mga probinsya na magpapatupad ng alert level system, kinonsulta po ang mga LGUs. Hindi po siguro nakonsulta ang buong League of Governors kasi hindi naman po i-implement sa lahat ng probinsya ang alert level system. Pero yung mga lugar, yung mga expanded pilot areas po, nakonsulta po sila dahil ang mga local na mga pamahalaan naman po ang magpapatupad ditong alert level system.
The palace also defended the decision of the Pandemic Task Force to expand a new strategy against COVID-19.
Well, ito po'y kabahagi pa rin ng pilot, no? At hindi naman po siguro i-expand ang pilot kung hindi talaga bumaba ang mga kaso ng COVID at hindi bumaba yung hospital utilization rate. So, bagamat wala pa pong konklusyon na talagang siguradong epektibo na itong alert level system, yung mga paunang datos po ay nagpapakita na mukhang gumagana po itong alert level system.
Meanwhile, the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines, or ULAP, said the pilot implementation of the alert level system in some provinces went smoothly. ULAP National President Quirino Governor Daquila Cua said this has been previously discussed among the different LGUs. Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Philippines recorded 4,806 new cases of novel coronavirus disease for COVID-19, pushing the nationwide case count to 2,740,111. The case bulletin of the Department of Health also showed 5,934 new survivors were logged. This brought the recovery tally to 2,633,039. Death toll, however, climbed to 41,237 after 260 more death patients died. Meanwhile, the overall global COVID-19 caseload has reached 242,132,659, while the deaths have surged to 4,924,031, according to the Johns Hopkins University. The U.S. is the worst hit country with the world's highest number of cases and deaths at 45,219,067 and 731,265 respectively, according to the CSSE. In terms of infections, India follows in second place with 34,127,450 cases and 452,811 deaths. In terms of deaths, Brazil comes second with 604,228 fatalities. Some presidential aspirants have already expressed opinions on certain issues that the country is facing. They also started to lay out their plans once elected. But according to a political analyst, these statements are not yet the basis to say who among them will be front runners in the coming elections. Nel Marie Buhok will tell us why.
A candidate's popularity at this time is not a guarantee of his or her victory in the coming 2022 presidential elections. Professor Ramon Casiple said that the real battle will actually begin once the campaign season starts.
Magsimula ka lang mag-isip ng chances kapag permanente na yung listahan at saka nagkampanya na, may mga issue na doon.
This early, some of the aspirants are already making their presence felt in different parts of the country. Today, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno, together with his running mate Doc Willie Ong and the Aksyon Demokratiko senatorial slate, visited Barangay Banaba in Tarlac. Moreno met with the farmers and promised to use government properties in different parts of the country to help farmers and fisher folks.
Naisip ko, hindi na ako totos hindi na ako gagastos, sorry ha, I hope papasensya nyo kung minsan ha. Hindi na ako gagastos para bumili ng lupa. Ang gagastusan ko na lang ay magtatatag ako ng cold storage facility para sa dalawang industriya. Total, ikaw gulay ang tinanong mo, isasabay ko na rito yung isda.
Labor leader Leody de Guzman also wants to focus on agricultural sector.
Buong Pilipinas, 45 million yan. May 11 million na mga magsasaka at yan din ang aking pangunahing paglilingkuran dahil plano ko, Wilson, na buhusan ng pondo yung ating sektor ng magsasaka at saka mangingisda para tiyakin yung food security, yung availability ng pagkain.
Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa, who is the standard bearer of the PDP Laban Kusi wing, is pushing for the economic provision of the 1987 Constitution. Meanwhile, Vice President Leni Robredo vows to put an end to corruption and culture of violence that has allegedly persisted under the present administration. Senator Panfilo Lacson, on the other hand, is considering scrapping lockdowns as a way of preventing the spread of COVID-19 should he win in next year's elections. Lastly, former Senator Bongbong Marcos wanted to bring back unifying leadership as the country faced the COVID-19 crisis, which he dubbed one of the greatest tests in its history. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue, we serve the people, we give glory to God.
Attorney Melvin Matibag has apologized for his temperament during the Senate budget hearing of the Department of Energy earlier today. Matibag, who also sits as the president and CEO of the National Transmission Corporation, or Transco, was removed by Senate Finance Subcommittee Vice Chairman Sherwin Gatchalian from the virtual hearing. This after accusing Senator Manny Pacquiao of politicking and for calling the hearing political. Pacquiao was then questioning Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi on the issue on the independent market operator of the Philippines and raised its possible connection with Matibag and his wife. Matibag says his behavior was brought about by the indignation from what he considered an unfair hearing. He adds Pacquiao should not be allowed to misuse the Senate's authority in pursuit of his own personal gains. The camps of Pacquiao and Matibag in PDP Laban are currently in conflict as they both claim as the ruling party's legitimate representatives.
The Department of Justice will focus its review over the war on drugs case files in urban areas. Dante Amento tells us why.
Due to the high number of recorded case folders in relation to the government's war on drugs, Department of Justice or DOJ Undersecretary Adrian Sugay says they have decided to prioritize their review on case files in urban areas.
Yung 6,000 yan no, na natitira na kailangang tignan marami-rami yan pero sabi nga masyadong marami yan. So we have a few months to do it. So ang napag-usapan namin ni La Secretary dito sa loob ng DOJ, siguro nararapat na mag-concentrate tayo certain urban areas Kung titingnan niyo itong information table, makikita niyo wala rito ang Visayas and maybe just some areas sa Bicol region ganyan and maybe some areas in Mindanao or in NCR.
Sugay added, the Philippine National Police is also cooperative with their effort.
Si PNP chief naman nagpahayag ng kanyang willingness at readiness to make available itong mga case records na ito sa DOJ. So yan ang gagawin namin, Yusek Rocky, in the next few months. Magre-review pa kami ng mga case files hinggil dito sa mga namatay as a result of an anti-illegal drug operations.
Recently, the President disclosed to the United Nations General Assembly that he ordered the Justice Department and the PNP to review the drug cases and make accountable those who will be proven liable. The DOJ clarifies after the submission of its review to the Office of the President, it will be up to the Chief Executive if he will make the report available to the public. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Armed Forces of the Philippines officially opened the AFP Joint Exercise in Cebu City. Dagit Pa stands for Dagat Langit Lupa, an annual unilateral exercise that seeks to enhance land, air, and maritime assets joint interoperability operations. AFP Chief of Staff General Jose Faustino says among the major events are air detection and interception, live fire exercise, urban operations, maritime operations, amphibious operations, and cyber defense exercise. 1,555 active personnel and 71 reservists will participate in drills that focus on territorial defense, internal security operations, and cyber defense operations.
Some senators support the call to suspend the excise tax on fuel amid the price increases in petroleum products. Meanwhile, the Energy Department is also requesting lawmakers to amend a measure to give them power to suspend fuel taxes. Arlene Delgado will tell us why.
In their budget Senate hearing, Department of Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi has asked the senators to amend the oil deregulation law, seeking to grant them authority to suspend excise taxes on petroleum products during abnormal conditions. Cusi wants to have a mechanism that will suspend the fuel excise tax once oil prices in the global market breach $80 per barrel.
We have that mechanism in the under Bayanihan 2, I believe, but it is time-bound, so it's expired already. So, and I believe it's about time that we need more provisions that would allow DOE to do something like suspending excise tax, now the VAT.
The Energy Secretary says Finance Chief Carlos Dominguez is now studying the impact should the suspension push through, noting that the country is also in need of taxes on revenues. Cusi also wants to seek other mechanisms to protect the interests of consumers, including unbundling of oil prices. However, Senator Amy Marcos believes a legislative action is no longer needed as the executive department has the power to suspend. Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel also said that kind of power should be given to the president and not to an unelected official. Despite this, the senators agree that a suspension in the fuel excise tax should be done. Senator Panfilo Lacson urges Dominguez to use the provision in the train law that will suspend the implementation of the increase on excise tax upon the recommendation of the Development Budget Coordination Committee or DBCC. Senate Committee on Energy Chairperson Sherwin Gatchalian adds suspending the excise tax is one way to cushion the price hikes, but he also suggests to activate the Pantawid Pasada program and grant subsidies to public utility vehicle drivers when crude prices are high. Marcos also proposes to the Energy Department to study the possible suspension of value-added tax or VAT on petroleum products and subsidize fuel costs for affected drivers in the public transport sector. Earlier, the Department of Transportation said they will look into granting of subsidies to public utility vehicle drivers to avoid fare hikes. Jorlene Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Transport groups has put on hold their petition for fare increase. Pasang Mazda President Obet Martin said they will wait first for subsidy that the government promised to them.
Ay hindi na namin may tutuloy, pero naka-pending lang, naka-file lang. Kasi nakapag-usap na kami, nagkaroon kami ng executive hearing sa Congress. Nagkasundo na kami na tungkol doon sa cash subsidy at saka sa fuel subsidy na ibibigay naman ng DOE sa mga big companies.
Aside from the cash subsidy, they are also appealing to LTFRB to finally allow 100% capacity in public vehicles for them to recover from the effects of the pandemic. Last week, drivers asked for a 3 pesos additional minimum fare following the series of price increases on petroleum products.
And in other news, Maynilad announced it will be deferring its pipe realignment project scheduled this coming Monday, October 25. This comes after customers requested that they be given more time to prepare for the scheduled water interruption.
Nakipag-ugnayan kami sa DPWH at sa MWSS ukol dito at napagdesisyonan na iurong ang implementasyon para po sabay na rin sa undas kung kailan po karaniwang umuwi sa probinsya ang mga tao. Inusog natin sa October 29 hanggang November 1st. Dumagsa kasi yung request mula sa customers na iurong ang aktibidad para po magkaroon ng mas mahabang panahon na makapagkanda.
Some 2.9 million Maynilad customers in Manila, Las Piñas City, Parañaque City, Makati City, Pasay City, and some parts of Cavite will be affected by the scheduled interruptions.
For the news abroad, Western Australia Premier Mark McGowan announced new vaccine rules on Wednesday, with huge fines and job loss threatening those who will fail to comply. Maeve Dog will tell us why live. Good evening, Maeve.
Good evening, Elsie. Around 1.1 million Australian workers in Western Australia are required to be vaccinated by January 1 to prepare the state for community transmission. The new mandate applies to industries such as construction, teaching, and hospitality, which makes up 75% of the state's workforce. The compulsory vaccine rules will be rolled out across 3 groups. The first group consists of port, transport, and freight workers, health and aged care staff, police and fly-in fly-out mining workers, community workers, and fire and emergency services employees are required to be fully vaccinated by December 31. The second group includes employees in supermarkets, groceries, restaurants, pubs and cafes, post offices, hardware stores, patrol stations, childcare, public transport, and construction, and must get their second dose by January 31. Teaching staff must also be fully vaccinated by the start of Term 1. Finally, the third group, comprising of government employees, members of the parliament, and other retail shop workers, must be fully vaccinated to attend work in the event of a lockdown.
All through this pandemic, the Western Australian community has come together and kept each other safe. But border controls will not be there forever. When the time is right and our vaccination rate is high enough, border controls will ease further, and we need to ensure our key workforces are protected. Mandatory vaccination is about protecting WA. It's about protecting and safeguarding our essential services and businesses for the long term.
Premier McGowan said Western Australia is on track to reach 80% vaccination in December, with the state's border most likely to remain shut to other states for the rest of the year. Elsie?
Thank you, Mavian Dog. United Kingdom Prime Minister Boris Johnson has sealed a comprehensive free trade deal with New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Paul Gatchalian details why. Live. Yes, Paul?
Elsie, the free trade agreement is a step towards furthering the ties of United Kingdom with the Indo-Pacific. This is also beneficial for consumers and businesses of both countries. It will cut red tape for businesses and end tariffs on UK exports, including clothing, ships, and bulldozers, while tariffs on New Zealand's wine, honey, and kiwi fruits will also be removed.
I think it means that we will be able to have the benefit of our wonderful New Zealand products even more cheaply than before. We've got from Sauvignon Blanc to Manuka honey and kiwi fruit and all sorts of other benefits. So I think it's a good deal for both of us.
The agreement will also open up New Zealand's job market to UK professionals such as lawyers and architects, making it easier for them to live and work in New Zealand. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said the deal is good for their long-standing and unique relationship with the UK.
And the fourth for me is concluding on matters that relate to our people-to-people exchange, because again, that's what makes our relationship unique, and it's so much a part of who we are as a nation, the people-to-people links that we have with you. So I believe this is an agreement that we can both be rightly proud of.
The UK government hopes the deal is a step towards joining a trade club with the likes of Canada and Japan after its departure from the European Union. However, the Labour and National Farmers Union said this could hurt UK farmers and lower food standards. Elsie?
Paul, why does this deal between the UK and NZ matter?
Well, Elsie, this is the first agreed big deal set by Britain's new Secretary Anne-Marie Trevelyan in her tenure, and she believes that by getting this deal done, the UK's application to the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP, will be looked upon more favorably. Back to you, Elsie.
Thank you, Paul Gatchalian, for that live report. New research reveals that New Zealanders and businesses are complacent about climate change. This despite a major UN climate report confirming that humans are driving climate change and the effects will be catastrophic if emissions are not slashed. A research by the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority shows more than a third of New Zealand businesses does not think climate change will affect them, but authorities are urging people to step up and play their part to cut climate gases. Prominent Russian critic Alexei Navalny has been awarded as European Union's top human rights prize. Charisse Longbowen details why live. Charisse?
Good evening, Elsie. The European Prize Award recognizes Alexei Navalny, the fiercest prominent critic opposition leader, for his bravery in defending of human rights. The selection was held last Wednesday in an open criticism by the leaders of the European Parliament for the freedom of thought, which is commonly known as the Sakharov Prize. The 44-year-old anti-corruption campaigner releases scores of damning reports exposing corruption in Vladimir Putin's Russia. He was figured as an active mass protester. Despite the convictions that prevented him from running against Mr. Putin during the 2018 election, he was well received by supporters in the country. He has been convicted twice on criminal charges, embezzlement, and fraud. Hence, he was sentenced to 5 years and 3.5 years. He was also charged multiple times for leading protests and his anti-corruption foundation. Due to being diagnosed as having been poisoned by a Soviet-era nerve agent, he had to leave Russia and ended up in an intensive care box in Germany. Since his recovery, he was accused of not appearing for regular in-person check-ins with law enforcement officers for his suspended sentence in 2014, which expired in December 2020, thus putting him on a wanted list by the Russia's prison service. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of protesters took to the street to demand of Navalny's release from detention. Elsie?
Thank you, Charisse Longbowen. And those are the reasons behind the news in other parts of the globe. I am Elsie Marcos, live from Auckland, New Zealand. Good evening.
Meanwhile, the Philippine government has filed 211 diplomatic notes against China over maritime disputes under the Duterte administration. Department of Foreign Affairs Assistant Secretary for Office of Public and Cultural Diplomacy Eduardo Meñez confirms that 153 notes verbal were filed this year alone, the latest of which was on September 30. The DFA protested over 200 radio challenges, sounding of sirens and blowing of horns by Chinese-flagged vessels against Philippine authorities. The Commission on Elections has released its guidelines for the conduct of voting simulation on Saturday, October 23. COMELEC will be using 4 classrooms as polling precincts and 3 classrooms as holding areas for 3,564 test voters. The activity aims to determine the average time in the verification process of the voter's identity. All participants are required to wear masks, face shields, and observe other minimum health standards. And before we close, we will leave you with a word, giving glory to God. From the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 27, it says, "Withhold not good from them to whom it is due, when it is in the power of thine hand to do it." And those are the reasons behind the news, October 21, 2021. I am Harleen Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
And because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Lahat po ng mga rehiyon at mga probinsya na magpapatupad ng alert level system, kinonsulta po ang mga LGUs. Hindi po siguro nakonsulta ang buong League of Governors kasi hindi naman po i-implement sa lahat ng probinsya ang alert level system.
Magsimula ka lang mag-isip ng chances kapag permanente na yung listahan at saka nagkampanya na, may mga issue na doon.